November 14th, 2024, 11:47 p.m., The Obsidian Club, Manhattan. Vivian Castellano stood before a decision that would define the next 47 minutes of her life and every hour that followed. She could expose herself and face a $5 million bounty, or she could allow Marcus Dante Moretti, the most arrogant mafia boss in New York, to humiliate her in front of 200 witnesses. The air hung thick with Cuban cigar smoke and the particular strain of fear that vibrated beneath clinking baccarat crystal. She gripped the wine-soaked cloth in her hand, red liquid dripping onto Italian marble like blood at a crime scene. Stage lights from the basement fighting ring below cast shadows that climbed the velvet walls. Her heart hammered at 140 beats per minute, the same rhythm she'd learned to recognize in Atlantic City before every bare-knuckle match. What Vivian didn't know, in 47 minutes, she would kill 3 men to save the life of her enemy. That single act would shatter both their worlds forever. The Obsidian defined exclusive in a city that worshipped wealth and power. $30,000 leather sofas imported from Florence, crystal chandeliers that cost more than most Americans earned in a decade. The bass line from the jazz quartet on the main floor made the glassware tremble in perfect rhythm. This was Marcus Moretti's kingdom, where decisions worth millions happened over 18 years scotch and handshakes that meant more than any contract. The club smelled of expensive cologne, aged tobacco, and the metallic tang of old money protecting itself. Vivian adjusted her thick, black-rimmed glasses and kept her head down, balancing a tray that held 6 champagne flutes. Total weight? 8 pounds. She had worked at the Obsidian for 3 weeks, perfecting the art of invisibility in plain sight. Her uniform hung 2 sizes too large, deliberately chosen to hide the definition in her shoulders and arms. She walked with a slight shuffle, masking the predatory grace of a woman who had spent 15 years learning to kill with precision. Here, she wasn't the Wraith, the ring name that had made bookies rich and strong men afraid across the East Coast underground circuit. Here she was, just Vivian, the clumsy nobody who spilled drinks and apologized too much. A drunk patron stumbled into her from behind, a Wall Street type with cocaine confidence and wandering hands. Physics demanded she fall, scatter glass, make a scene. Instead, her body executed a 45-degree pivot, weight shifting to her left leg in a movement so subtle the cameras wouldn't catch it. The tray didn't waver. Not a single drop of champagne touched the rim. The drunk mumbled an apology and staggered away. The club manager, Raymond, watched from his station near the kitchen. His eyes narrowed for half a second before moving on. Vivian's pulse spiked. That balance, that impossible steadiness, it belonged to a trained fighter, not a minimum-wage server. She'd made a mistake, revealed a fragment of muscle memory she'd spent 6 months trying to bury. She pushed through the kitchen doors, breathing hard. Steam from industrial dishwashers clouded the air. The smell of garlic and expensive beef filled her lungs. She set the tray down and moved to the women's restroom, locking herself in a stall. Her hands trembled now, not from fear, but from the constant effort of holding back. She removed her glasses and stared at her reflection in the polished steel of the sanitary napkin dispenser. Green eyes stared back, sharp as broken glass. A small scar behind her left ear marked the night in Atlantic City when Big Sal Romano had tried to cave her skull with an illegal elbow. She'd broken his femur in the next exchange. The crowd had roared. The syndicate had noticed. 47 days. She whispered the number like a prayer. 47 more days of tips and humiliation, and she'd have enough cash for a quality fake passport. Canada beckoned with promises of anonymity and coffee shop jobs where nobody cared about your past. She could disappear into Vancouver or Toronto, become someone who had never thrown a punch in her life. She replaced her glasses, hunched her shoulders, and stepped back into the role. The girl who couldn't fight back. The girl who took abuse with downcast eyes and trembling hands. The performance had kept her alive for 6 months. She could endure 47 more days. The kitchen buzzed with Friday night chaos. Angela, a 19-year-old server from Brooklyn with third-generation Italian roots and dreams bigger than her paycheck, stood frozen while the head chef screamed inches from her face. She dropped a plate. Porcelain shards glittered on the tile like stars. Vivian stepped between them, her voice small and apologetic. "My fault, chef. I set the plate too close to the edge." The chef's face purpled, veins standing out on his neck, but he swallowed his rage and waved them both away. Angela looked at Vivian with gratitude that made something twist in Vivian's chest. The girl reminded her of herself at 19, before Lorenzo Castellano had sold his daughter to the highest bidder and called it training. Never let the strong abuse the weak. Her father had taught her that principle in the worst possible way, by being the strong who abused her for 14 years. But the lesson had carved itself into her bones. She couldn't watch someone get destroyed without intervening, even when intervention threatened her own survival. Back in the main room, Vivian scanned the crowd with peripheral vision trained to catch threats. The Obsidian attracted New York's elite criminals, the ones who wore Armani instead of leather, who signed death warrants with Mont Blanc pens. She'd learned to read the room in Atlantic City, where missing the subtle shift in a boss's expression could mean a knife between your ribs in the parking lot. Booth 7 lit up on the service monitor. VIP section. Her stomach dropped. Raymond appeared at her shoulder, his cologne too strong and too cheap for this establishment. "Vivian, more wine for Mr. Moretti's table." She wanted to refuse, to claim sickness, to vanish into the November night and never return. Instead, she picked up a bottle of Chateau Margaux, 1996. The label read $3,200. She'd never held anything that expensive, except her own life. The cardinal rule that had kept her alive for 6 months screamed in her head. Don't attract attention. Do the work. Stay silent. Disappear. She approached booth 7 with her eyes locked on the white tablecloth. Marcus Dante Moretti sat in the center of the curved velvet banquette, like a dark prince surveying his kingdom. 34 years old, 6'3", Tom Ford suit that cost $12,000. Black hair swept back from a face that belonged on ancient Roman coins, all sharp angles and aristocratic cruelty. His eyes were the color of espresso brewed too long, dark and bitter and calculating. A full sleeve of tattoos covered his right arm, hidden now beneath expensive fabric. A scar ran along his left ribs, a souvenir from a turf war when he was 18 and stupid enough to think he was invincible. Beside him sat Salvatore DiNardo, 42 years old and loyal to Marcus for 15 years. They called him Sal, though never to his face, unless you wanted to see disappointment flicker in his eyes. He was built like a linebacker, with a scar running down his neck from a failed assassination attempt that had killed the previous boss. His hands never stopped moving, always ready, always watching. On Marcus's other side, Vincent Marcello nursed his 5th drink of the night. Chicago had sent Vinny 3 weeks ago to discuss territory expansions and profit-sharing arrangements. The man was 38 going on 60, with the nervous energy of someone who'd gambled away more money than he'd ever legitimately earned. Sweat gleamed on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Marcus held a leather folder, reviewing financial documents with the focused intensity that had built his empire. He didn't look up as Vivian approached. His voice carried anyway, low and smooth and absolutely certain of being obeyed. "More wine." Vinny's hand shot out and grabbed Vivian's wrist before she could pour. His palm was hot and damp, his grip painful. Hey, pretty face hiding behind those ugly glasses. Why does Marcus hire such frumpy staff in a place like this? The wine bottle tilted in her hand. Instinct screamed a 3-move combination that would have Vinny unconscious before his brain registered the first strike. Snap the wrist, pivot, elbow to the temple. 0.8 seconds, maybe less. She'd drilled the sequence 10,000 times in gyms from Newark to Las Vegas. She forced herself to stumble instead, playing clumsy and weak. "Please, sir, let go." Marcus closed his folder with the deliberate precision of a man who wasted no movement. His voice carried boredom, indifference to her suffering. He cared about the noise level, not her safety. "Vinny, Leave the help alone. Vinny laughed, a wet sound full of alcohol and poor decisions. Just having fun, boss. He yanked Vivian harder, pulling her off balance. The sudden jerk made the bottle tilt past the point of recovery. Red wine, thick and dark as arterial blood, cascaded out in a perfect arc. It missed the crystal glass entirely and splashed across Marcus Moretti's pristine white dress shirt. The liquid spread across the charcoal wool of his suit jacket, a stain that would never fully wash out. The jazz quartet's trumpet hit a high note and held it. Then silence crashed down like a physical force. Conversation within a 30-foot radius died mid-syllable. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. 200 people in the club became 200 statues, all attention focused on booth 7. Vinny released Vivian's wrist as if her skin had caught fire. His face went pale. Marcus slowly closed the leather folder. He looked down at the spreading crimson stain on his chest. His fingers touched the wet fabric, came away dark. He raised his eyes to meet Vivian's, and for the first time she looked directly at him. His gaze held no emotion, just calculation, the measuring stare of a predator deciding if prey was worth the effort to kill. Do you know what this suit is made of? The question emerged barely above a whisper, but it filled every corner of the silent club. Vivian's throat closed. She grabbed a napkin, reaching out with hands she forced to shake. I'm so sorry, sir. Sal intercepted her hand, his grip crushing bone against bone. Don't touch him. Marcus stood. He towered over her, 6'3" of pure intimidation wrapped in ruined $12,000 wool. He took the napkin from her hand, wiped a spot of wine from his chin, and let the cloth fall to the floor. Vicuña wool, $12,000. The wine you just wasted cost another $3,200. Total damages, $15,200. Her mind raced through calculations. Minimum wage, 15 hours a week, tips averaging $60 per shift. 3 years and 2 months to pay off that debt, assuming she ate nothing but rice and never paid rent. I'll pay for it. The words came out wrong, too small and broken. I'll work it off, please. Marcus laughed. The sound held no humor, just dry acknowledgement of a cosmic joke. You're a waitress. You make $15 an hour plus tips. It would take you 3 years and 2 months to pay for my laundry bill. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. The scent of sandalwood and danger rolled off him in waves. He was studying her now, looking for the fear, waiting for tears. That's what they always did when they had power. They waited for you to cry, to beg, to offer them pieces of yourself in exchange for mercy. But Vivian didn't cry. Behind the thick lenses of her glasses, her eyes remained steady. She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth, controlling her heart rate the way Declan O'Malley had taught her in that Atlantic City gym when she was 16 and terrified. 4 counts in, hold 4. 4 counts out. The rhythm calmed her autonomic nervous system, dropped her pulse from 140 to 95. Marcus noticed. Confusion flickered across his face, quick as lightning. Most people shook uncontrollably when he loomed over them. This woman stood still. Too still. You have good balance for a clumsy girl. The words emerged as a murmur, almost to himself. Then he lashed out. A backhand slap aimed at her face, not to cause serious damage but to humiliate, to knock those ugly glasses off and make her understand her place in his hierarchy. It happened in a fraction of a second. Vivian didn't think. Her body betrayed her. Before his hand could connect with her cheek, her head slipped to the left. A microscopic movement, the kind of defensive slip that boxers drilled until it became autonomic reflex. Her left hand shot up and checked his forearm, redirecting the energy of his blow harmlessly into empty air. Time stopped. Marcus's hand hovered in the space where her face had been a millisecond ago. He stared at his own hand, then at her. The confusion in his eyes sharpened into dangerous curiosity. Vivian realized her catastrophic mistake. She immediately hunched her shoulders, looking at the floor. I flinched. I'm sorry. Marcus wasn't buying it. The boredom vanished from his expression, replaced by something predatory and focused. He'd thrown that slap with the speed that had dropped rival enforcers in turf disputes. A clumsy waitress didn't dodge Marcus Moretti by accident. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "You didn't flinch. You slipped the jab." He released her and turned to Sal. "Clear the room. Everyone out. Now!" Sal's massive frame shifted with confusion. "Boss?" "I said everyone out!" The roar came from somewhere deep in Marcus's chest, the voice of a man who'd built an empire on making people obey without question. Terrified patrons scrambled for exits. VIP members who'd paid $5,000 just for booth access fled like roaches when the lights came on. Within 90 seconds, the main floor stood empty except for Marcus, Sal, Vinny, and Vivian. Marcus unbuttoned his wine-stained jacket and tossed it onto the leather seat. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and covered in tattoos that told stories in ink and scar tissue. A full sleeve of Italian heritage mixed with symbols of power. A lion, a crown, playing cards showing a dead man's hand. "You owe me $15,200. His voice had shifted into something dangerous and playful, a cat toying with a mouse before the kill. "Since you can't pay with money, we're going to negotiate a different form of payment." Vivian took a step back. Her mind raced through escape routes. 2 exits, both blocked. Windows 40 feet up, reinforced glass. Sal positioning himself between her and the kitchen. Vinny standing near the main entrance with a gun-shaped bulge under his jacket. "I don't do that kind of thing, sir." Marcus smirked. "Get your mind out of the gutter. I don't want your body in my bed. I want to see what you're hiding under that apron." He pointed to the heavy iron door at the back of the VIP room. "Downstairs, the gym. If you can last 3 minutes in the ring with me without getting knocked out, I'll forget the debt. I'll even give you a tip." Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs. The gym, the ring, the one place she couldn't go. If she fought, she would reveal herself. If she revealed herself, the people hunting her would find her. And if they found her, the $5 million bounty would bring every hungry enforcer on the East Coast to collect. "And if I refuse?" Marcus pulled a silver lighter from his pocket and flicked the lid open and closed. Clink, clink. "Then Vinny here takes you out to the alley and teaches you a lesson about respecting your betters. And trust me, Vinny doesn't know when to stop." Vivian looked at Vinny, who cracked his knuckles with a sadistic grin that promised broken bones and worse. Then she looked back at Marcus. The arrogant kingpin thought he was challenging a helpless waitress to a humiliating beatdown. He thought he was the shark in the tank. She slowly untied her apron, folded it neatly, set it on the bar. She removed her glasses, folding them with deliberate care and placing them on the polished mahogany. Without the frames, her eyes blazed green and sharp as cut emeralds. 3 minutes. Her voice no longer trembled. It came out flat, cold, composed. The voice of a woman who'd survived worse than Marcus Moretti could imagine. Marcus's smile widened, but something in his gut whispered a warning he couldn't explain. 3 minutes, sweetheart. Try not to die. The basement of the Obsidian stood in stark contrast to the velvet luxury above. Exposed brick and concrete, the smell of old sweat, iron, and industrial bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. In the center stood a regulation-sized boxing ring, the canvas stained with faint dark patches that no amount of scrubbing could erase. This was where the Moretti family settled disputes that couldn't be resolved with money. Blood sanctified agreements here. Pain taught lessons that lawyers never could. Marcus stepped into the ring, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet. He moved with fluid confidence, a man who trained regularly and remembered the basics from his Golden Gloves days. He wasn't a professional, but he was a brawler, strong, aggressive, accustomed to winning through force and intimidation. At 18, he'd been runner-up in the New York Golden Gloves tournament. Then his father had called him home to learn the family business. Boxing became a hobby. Violence became a career. Sal stood by the bell, looking nervous. He'd seen Marcus fight before, had watched him break ribs and jaws when enforcement was required. But something felt wrong about this. The woman's eyes held no fear, just cold assessment. Vinny leaned against the ropes, holding his scotch, grinning like this was the best entertainment money could buy. 500 says she starts crying in 30 seconds, boss. Marcus didn't take his eyes off Vivian. Make it 1,000. She'll beg before that. Vivian stood outside the ropes. She'd removed her waitress uniform to reveal a simple gray tank top and black leggings underneath. Her arms were slender but defined, the muscle density obvious now without the oversized clothing. Long, lean muscle built for endurance and explosive speed, not show. She kicked off her cheap work shoes and stepped onto the canvas barefoot. The texture of the mat under her feet triggered a rush of adrenaline, old and familiar as a childhood memory. This was the drug she'd been clean from for 6 months. The hit of combat, the razor edge between control and chaos. The wraith stirred in her chest like a ghost waking from sleep. Control, she told herself. Don't knock him out. Survive. Defend. Make it look like luck. Gloves? She gestured to the rack on the wall where training equipment hung. Marcus raised his fists. Bare knuckle. I want to feel it when I hit you. Unless you're scared. He was trying to provoke her, make her angry and sloppy. A fighter who let emotion drive their hands was a fighter who made mistakes. Vivian didn't respond. She simply walked to the center of the ring and raised her hands. But she didn't adopt a traditional boxing stance. She kept her hands open, palms facing him, in what looked like an amateur defensive posture. To the untrained eye, it appeared clumsy. In reality, she'd positioned herself in a variation of a Muay Thai guard, designed to catch and trap incoming strikes. Sal's hand slapped the canvas. Time! Marcus lunged immediately. No warm-up, no feeling out process. He threw a straight right aimed directly at her jaw, a punch meant to end the fight in the first exchange. Vivian saw the telegraph in his shoulder before his arm began to move. Time seemed to slow. She could have stepped inside and shattered his ribs with an uppercut, could have swept his lead leg and cracked his skull on the canvas, could have ended this in 2 seconds. Instead, she did the bare minimum. She ducked frantically, making it look like a panic reaction. Marcus's fist sailed over her head, wind rushing past her ear. Slippery. Marcus turned and swung a heavy left hook. Vivian stumbled backward, tripping over her own feet intentionally, falling against the ropes. The hook missed her nose by an inch, close enough to feel the air pressure change. Get up, Marcus barked, enjoying the chase. Stop running. Vivian scrambled to her feet, breathing hard. I can't do this. She added a quiver to her voice, selling weakness. 2 minutes left, Vinny jeered from the sidelines. Hit her, boss! Marcus cornered her. He unleashed a flurry of body shots, combinations meant to dig into her ribs and drive the air from her lungs. Vivian covered up, bringing her elbows tight to her body in perfect shell defense. To Marcus, it looked like cowering. In reality, she was catching every punch on her forearms and elbows, protecting her vital organs while absorbing minimal damage. He hits hard, she noted clinically. Good power, poor accuracy. Overcommits his weight on every punch. 10 years since his last real fight, muscle memory fading. One of Marcus's punches slipped through her guard and grazed her cheekbone. The skin split. Warm blood trickled down her face, the copper taste reaching her lips. The sight of blood triggered something in Marcus. His eyes darkened. The boredom and playfulness vanished, replaced by something primal. He wound up for a haymaker, a massive, telegraphed punch that left his entire midsection exposed. It was instinct, pure, undeniable muscle memory. As Marcus threw the haymaker, Vivian's body took over. She couldn't help it. The opening was perfect, a gift handed to her by years of training and 10,000 sparring rounds. She dropped her level, pivoting on her right foot. She drove her fist upward, not with full power, that would kill him, but with perfect precision, targeting the solar plexus where the celiac plexus nerves clustered like electrical wiring. The sound was wet and sickening. Marcus's eyes bulged. Air left his lungs in a violent whoosh. He staggered backward, clutching his chest, his face turning purple. He tried to inhale, but his diaphragm had gone into spasm, paralyzed by the perfectly placed strike. Silence descended on the gym. Vinny dropped his glass. It shattered on the concrete, the sound sharp and final. Vivian stood frozen, her chest heaving. She'd broken character, shattered the illusion. A waitress didn't know how to throw a liver shot. A waitress didn't understand anatomy well enough to target the solar plexus with surgical precision. Marcus dropped to one knee, wheezing. Water streamed from his eyes due to oxygen deprivation, but there was no anger in his face anymore. Just recognition. Understanding dawning like a terrible sunrise. He gasped, sucking in a ragged breath. Who are you? Vivian backed away toward the ropes. Her mind raced through lies. I got lucky. You slipped. Bullshit, Marcus wheezed, forcing himself to stand. Pain radiated through his core, immense and undeniable, but he ignored it. He wiped sweat from his forehead. That was a liver shot, shovel hook, professional technique, precise. He walked toward her, not aggressively this time, but with terrifying intensity. You're not a waitress, you're a fighter. I took a self-defense class at the Y. The lie came out weak, unconvincing even to her own ears. Don't lie to me! Marcus's voice echoed off concrete walls, bouncing back with authority earned through a decade of making people tell the truth or suffer consequences. I know violence when I see it. You move like a killer. He stopped 2 feet from her. He looked at the cut on her cheek, then down at her hands. He grabbed her right hand, forcing her palm open. His thumb traced the thick yellow calluses on her knuckles, the kind that came from thousands of hours hitting heavy bags and human bone. These aren't from carrying trays. His voice dropped to something almost gentle, which made it more frightening. These are from fighting. Suddenly, the heavy iron door at the top of the stairs burst open with a crash that made everyone jump. The bouncer from upstairs appeared, wild-eyed and breathing hard. Boss, we have a problem. Marcus didn't look away from Vivian. I'm busy. It's the Galante family. The bouncer's voice cracked with panic. They're outside. 3 SUVs. They say they're coming in for Vinny. Vinny, the drunk Chicago associate, suddenly looked sober as a judge. Fear washed the color from his face. Marcus, you gotta protect me. The Galantes think I skimmed their shipment in Jersey. I didn't know they knew I was here. A loud crash echoed from upstairs, glass breaking. Then the distinctive pop, pop, pop of semi-automatic pistols firing in controlled bursts. They're breaching the front! Sal shouted, pulling a gun from his waistband. Boss, we need to get you to the safe room. Marcus looked at Vivian. The moment stretched, suspended in amber. He had lost his suit, his dignity, his absolute control. This woman had done something impossible. She'd beaten him in a fight while pretending to be weak. And now his world was collapsing around both of them. You can leave through the back. Go. He said it like a command, but it sounded like a plea. Vivian hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run. This wasn't her fight. She should disappear into the November night, find a new city, start over with a different name and a different story. She'd gotten good at that over the past 6 months. But then she heard footsteps thundering down the stairs. The door flew open, and 3 men in tactical gear burst into the gym. They wore black windbreakers over body armor, MP5 submachine guns with suppressors hung from tactical slings. These weren't street thugs. They moved like soldiers, clearing corners with professional efficiency. The lead gunman, a man named Dominic Santoro, though Vivian didn't know his name yet, raised his weapon. His voice came out flat and emotionless. Kill everyone. Sal fired back, taking cover behind the ring post. Marcus dove behind a stack of gym mats, pulling a pistol from an ankle holster. But Vivian stood in the open, exposed on the canvas, 15 feet from the nearest cover. The lead gunman raised his MP5, aiming directly at her chest. His finger tightened on the trigger. Marcus saw it, saw death approaching this strange woman who'd just humiliated him, who'd revealed herself as something extraordinary and dangerous. He screamed, "Get down!" But Vivian didn't get down. She saw the gunman's finger squeeze, saw the angle of the barrel, calculated distance, trajectory, response time. In that moment, the last remnants of Vivian the waitress died. The Wraith was reborn. She didn't run away from the gun, she ran toward it. The distance between Vivian and the lead gunman measured 15 feet. In the world of ballistics, that span represented a lifetime if you knew how to use it. She launched herself forward with a burst of speed that seemed to violate the laws of physics, propelling off her back foot like a sprinter exploding from the blocks. Dominic Santoro adjusted his aim. He'd expected her to zigzag or dive for cover. He'd trained with Philadelphia's best tactical units, had dropped targets in situations far more complex than this. But his brain couldn't process a frontal assault from an unarmed woman in a tank top. By the time his neural pathways registered her trajectory, she'd crossed into the dead zone, the space too close for a long barrel to track effectively. Vivian's left palm slapped the MP5's barrel upward. The gun discharged, sending a spray of bullets into the concrete ceiling. Dust and fragments of stone rained down like snow. In the same motion, she stepped inside his guard and drove her right elbow into his throat. The sound of cartilage crushing cut through the ringing of gunfire. Dominic dropped the weapon, both hands flying to his neck, choking on his collapsed windpipe. She didn't pause to watch him fall. Her hands caught the MP5 by its tactical sling as gravity pulled it toward the floor. She spun, using Dominic's slumping body as a shield. The other two gunmen opened fire. Bullets thudded into Dominic's tactical vest, the impacts jerking his body violently against her back. Marcus watched from behind the gym mats, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. He'd witnessed professional violence his entire adult life. He'd seen Secret Service operatives work in D.C. during a weapons negotiation gone wrong. He'd watched Chicago outfit enforcers clear a room in under 20 seconds. But this was different. This wasn't brawling or spray-and-pray desperation. This was geometry. The absolute efficiency of movement refined until it became art. Vivian dropped to one knee, peering around Dominic's waist. She didn't waste ammunition on suppressing fire. 2 single shots. Crack, crack. The second gunman, a heavy-set enforcer named Carlo, dropped with a hole in his forehead. His body hit the concrete with the dead weight of meat. The third gunman realized the engagement had turned catastrophic. He scrambled for cover behind the boxing ring, leveling his weapon at Sal, who was pinned down and reloading his pistol with shaking hands. Marcus broke from cover to provide suppressing fire, his shots going wide but forcing the gunman to flinch. Vivian tossed the empty MP5 aside and sprinted toward the ring. She vaulted over the top rope in a move that required immense core strength, using her momentum to swing her legs out in a flying scissor kick. Her ankles caught the third gunman in the head, just as he rose to aim. The force knocked him unconscious instantly. His helmet clattered across the floor, rolling to a stop against the far wall. Silence crashed down, heavier than before. The air hung thick with cordite smoke and the iron smell of blood. Vinny cowered in the corner, sobbing. Tears and snot ran down his face in equal measure. "They're dead? Are they all dead?" Vivian stood in the center of carnage, her chest heaving. Adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the cold reality of what she'd done. She'd exposed herself completely. The mask had shattered beyond any hope of repair. The ghost was public now. She turned to look at Marcus. He slowly lowered his pistol, stepping over debris. His eyes never left her. He didn't examine the dead attackers or check on Sal. He only stared at the waitress with the messy bun and the blood-stained tank top. "You cleared a room of 3 Spec Ops mercenaries in 14 seconds. His voice held no arrogance now, just hollow recognition. The realization that everything he thought he understood about power and danger had just been rewritten by a woman he'd tried to humiliate. Vivian didn't answer. She walked to where her glasses lay on the floor, the lenses cracked from the chaos. She picked them up anyway, a futile attempt to resurrect the costume, but it was far too late for that. "We need to leave." Her voice came out raspy, damaged by adrenaline and exertion. "That was just the breach team. The cleanup crew will arrive in 2 minutes. If the Galantes are serious, they'll burn this building to the ground." Marcus snapped back into command mode, his survival instincts overriding his fascination. "Sal, get the car around back, now." Sal looked at Vivian with eyes that held something close to fear, then scrambled up the stairs. His footsteps echoed in the stairwell, fading fast. "Vinny, let's go." The Chicago associate couldn't stand. His legs had turned to water, all strength fled. "I can't walk, my legs won't work." Marcus crossed the distance in 3 strides and slapped Vinny hard enough to snap his head sideways. "Walk or die, your choice." They moved toward the emergency exit in the back alley. Vivian took point, moving with the acquired pistol from one of the fallen gunmen. She checked corners with practiced efficiency, cleared the hallway, and signaled them to advance with hand gestures that Marcus recognized from military training videos. He studied her back as they moved. A tattoo marked her right shoulder blade, partially visible through a tear in her tank top. A black chess piece. A knight. The memory hit him with the force of a freight train. 2 years ago, his cousin Frankie had called from Atlantic City with a story about an underground fight ring. A woman had defeated the heavyweight champion of the East Coast Circuit. Big Sal Romano, 300 pounds of steroid-enhanced muscle, had entered the ring confident and left on a stretcher with a shattered femur. They'd called her the Wraith. She fought in wraps and a simple mask, never spoke, never stayed for the purse collection. She'd vanished after refusing to throw a fight for the Luciano family. Rumors said they'd put $5 million on her head. Marcus felt something strange unfold in his chest. Not fear anymore. Fascination. The clumsy waitress he'd tried to bully was the most dangerous woman on the East Coast, and she was currently the only thing keeping him alive. They burst into the alley. Sal waited in a black Escalade, engine running, driver's door open. Marcus shoved Vinny into the back seat and climbed in after him. Vivian moved to the passenger seat, her movements precise and controlled despite the chaos. Sal floored it. Tires screamed against asphalt. They shot out of the alley and merged into late-night Manhattan traffic. Behind them, flames began to lick from the Obsidian's windows. The Galantes had made good on their threat. Marcus watched his kingdom burn in the side mirror. 15 years of work, millions of dollars in real estate and reputation, reduced to insurance claims and police reports. But he was alive. That counted for something. He turned his attention to Vivian, who sat rigid in the passenger seat, the stolen pistol resting in her lap with casual familiarity. "Where are we going?" "My place." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "Queens, Astoria, 4th floor walk-up. No security, no doorman, nobody knows it exists." Marcus looked down at his $3,000 shoes, then at the blood and dust covering his white shirt. The King of New York, hiding in a Queens tenement. The absurdity should have been insulting. Instead, it felt like the only smart move left. "Fine, take me to your castle, princess." The drive to Queens stretched 23 minutes through streets that gleamed with rain that had started falling while they were underground. Sal kept checking the mirrors, watching for pursuit that never materialized. The Escalade's interior smelled like leather and gun oil. Nobody spoke. Vinny had stopped crying, but his breathing came in ragged gasps. They parked 2 blocks from the Target building, a crumbling brick tenement on the corner of 34th Avenue and Ditmars Boulevard. Graffiti marked the entrance. The front door's lock had been broken for months. This was the kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business because asking questions drew the wrong kind of attention. Vivian led them up 4 flights of stairs. The stairwell reeked of urine and marijuana smoke. Somewhere above them, a couple argued in Spanish, their voices muffled by thin walls. Marcus's world had narrowed to this, following a ghost through a building where cockroaches scattered from their footsteps. The apartment was a studio barely larger than a prison cell. A single mattress lay on the floor, made with military precision. A small table held a laptop and a stack of burner phones. No pictures on the walls, no decorations, no plants. This was the home of someone ready to vanish in 5 minutes and leave no trace. Sal positioned himself by the door, blocking the peephole with his massive frame. Vinny slumped into the only chair, pulling out a bottle of vodka he'd somehow smuggled from the club. His hands shook as he drank straight from the bottle. Marcus moved to the window, peering through bent blinds at the street below. "If the Galantes find us here, we're trapped. It's a fatal funnel. One exit, no escape route. Vivian walked to a loose floorboard near the kitchenette. She pried it up and pulled out a first aid kit that looked more like a trauma surgeon's bag. Military-grade supplies, tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, surgical tools wrapped in sterile packaging. They won't find us unless someone tells them where we are. She cast a sharp glance at Vinny, who flinched under her gaze. She turned her attention to Marcus. Take off your shirt. You took a liver shot that dropped you to your knees, and you hit the floor hard during the firefight. I need to check for internal bleeding. Marcus raised an eyebrow, some of his natural arrogance surfacing despite exhaustion. At least buy me dinner first. Shirt off. No humor in her voice, just clinical detachment. He unbuttoned the ruined garment and let it fall. His torso told a story written in scar tissue. Knife wounds from a territorial dispute when he was 22. Bullet graze from an assassination attempt at 26. Wire marks from the time the Russians had tried to extract information about shipping routes. And currently, a massive, darkening bruise bloomed across his ribs where Vivian's shovel hook had landed with surgical precision. She pulled on latex gloves and began to palpate the area. Her fingers were cool and methodical, pressing into his flesh with enough force to test for damage. When she reached his lower ribs, Marcus hissed through clenched teeth. Nothing's broken. She applied cooling gel to the worst of the bruising. But you're going to feel this for weeks. You hit like a truck. He watched her work, studying the concentration on her face. I pulled the punch. She taped a bandage over a cut on his shoulder. If I'd thrown it with full hip rotation, I would have ruptured the organ. Marcus caught her wrist, stopping her movement. The air in the tiny room suddenly felt charged, heavy with unspoken questions. Why didn't you? Why didn't I what? Kill me. You hate men like me. Arrogant, violent. I treated you like garbage in my club. You had every reason and opportunity. Vivian looked up, her green eyes meeting his dark ones. The intensity of the connection made something shift in both their chests. You did treat me like garbage, but you didn't look at me with pity. You looked at me with challenge. And when the shooting started, you tried to protect me. You told me to get down. She pulled her wrist free gently. I'm used to men using me as a shield, Marcus. You're the first one who tried to be the shield for me. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus fell silent, processing this revelation. He watched her move around the small space, checking locks, turning off lights so they wouldn't cast shadows. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd survived far worse than tonight. Who taught you? The question emerged quieter than he intended. Atlantic City is where you fought, but where did you learn to shoot, to slip a jab like that? Vivian sat on the edge of the mattress, methodically cleaning the pistol she'd taken from the dead gunman. My father, Lorenzo Castellano. He was a boxer, Golden Gloves champion in the 90s, but the game destroyed him. Injuries, no money, drinking. He wanted a son. He got me instead. So he built the son he wanted out of the daughter he had, started training me at 8 years old. By 14, it wasn't training anymore. It was torture. Ice baths when I lost sparring sessions, no food for a day if my footwork was sloppy. Beatings that put me in the hospital twice, explained away as accidents. Marcus moved closer, sitting beside her on the narrow mattress. The proximity felt dangerous and necessary at the same time. Is he still alive? No, the word came out flat, emotionless. I killed him. The admission should have shocked Marcus. In his world, though, patricide wasn't a sin. Sometimes it was the only path to survival. Was it justified? It was survival. When I was 22, I escaped the Atlantic City syndicate. I came back to Newark to get him to help me disappear. He tried to sell me again, this time to the Luciano family out of Philadelphia. We fought in his apartment. He pulled a knife. I didn't need one. She set the pistol aside and looked at Marcus with an expression that held both vulnerability and steel. I broke his arm first, then his knee. Then I walked away while he was still alive. He bled out on his kitchen floor. The police ruled it self-defense when they found the knife and my blood all over the walls. Marcus reached out and touched a strand of hair that had fallen near her face. The gesture was gentle, almost reverent. You're not a waitress, Vivian, and you're not a monster. You're a queen in exile. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. For the first time in 6 months, she allowed herself to lean into human contact, just for a second, just enough to remember what it felt like to be touched without violence attached. Then she pulled back, reestablishing boundaries. We have one bed. I'll take the floor. The offer surprised even Marcus. Don't be stupid. You're injured. We share, back to back. If anyone comes through that door, we wake up fighting. They lay down on the narrow mattress, Marcus's back pressed against hers, and he could feel the steady rhythm of her breathing, the warmth of her body. For the first time in 10 years, since before his father had been killed and the weight of the family business had fallen on his shoulders, Marcus Moretti slept without the paranoid edge that usually kept him half awake. He had the wraith guarding his back. Dawn broke over Queens with the gray, sickly light of November in New York. Vivian's eyes opened before the sun fully rose, her internal clock calibrated for danger. She lay still, feeling Marcus's arm draped over her waist. In sleep, he'd turned toward her, seeking warmth and safety in ways his waking mind would never permit. She slid out carefully, not wanting to wake him yet. She moved to the table where her laptop waited, already monitoring all devices on the local network. A simple script she'd written tracked any unusual data transmissions. Her blood turned to ice. 3 outgoing messages from Vinny's phone, sent at 2:17 a.m. while everyone slept. She opened the log. The messages had been encrypted, but her decryption software made short work of basic cellular security. Message 1. We are in Astoria, 4th floor brick building, corner of 34th and Ditmars. Message 2. Waitress is the shooter. She's military trained. Message 3. Bring heavy crew. She's dangerous. Vivian didn't yell. The cold calm of the wraith descended over her like a familiar coat. She walked to the chair where Vinny had passed out, grabbed a handful of his greasy hair, and slammed his face into the wooden armrest. Vinny woke with a shriek, blood pouring from his nose. Marcus was up instantly, gun drawn, operating on instinct. Vivian, what? She threw the laptop onto Vinny's lap. He sold us. Marcus read the screen, his face transformed into something carved from stone, all humanity fleeing from his expression. You sold us to the Galantes after I saved your miserable life, Vinny blubbered through blood and snot. They threatened my mother. They showed me photos of her house in Chicago. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Marcus raised his pistol. Don't kill him. Vivian's command cut through the room with absolute authority. Marcus turned to her, confused. He's a liability. Dead, yes, but alive, he's an asset. If he's texting them, they're listening. She shoved the phone into Vinny's trembling hands. Text them back. Tell them the bodyguard is dead and the door is unlocked. Sal moved from his position by the window, understanding dawning. Why would we want them to think? Because I want them to come through that door thinking they've already won. Vivian's smile held no warmth, just the promise of violence delivered with surgical precision. Vinny's hands shook so hard he could barely type. He managed to compose the message, tears streaming down his face. They replied, ETA, 30 seconds. Ready? Vivian looked at Marcus, and something passed between them, understanding forged in fire. Born ready. The door didn't open. It exploded inward. A battering ram splintered the wood, and 2 men in dark windbreakers surged through, expecting an easy kill. They saw Vinny sitting on the floor and grinned. Vivian's shot took the lead man in the throat. Marcus popped up and double-tapped the second. The hallway erupted with automatic gunfire. Bullets shredded the drywall, filling the room with choking white dust. Vinny screamed, curled in a fetal position. A stray bullet from his own supposed allies found his neck. He made a wet gurgling sound and went still, his eyes wide with the surprise of betrayal. We can't hold this, Marcus shouted over the roar of gunfire. They have too many men. Vivian grabbed a flashbang grenade from her tactical bag, a relic from her days in the underground circuit when she'd needed to make quick exits from venues that didn't want to pay. She pulled the pin and tossed it into the hall. The concussive blast shook the building. Blinding light flooded through the doorway. She hauled Marcus toward the fire escape. "Go up, to the roof!" They scrambled out the window onto rusted metal stairs that clanged under their weight. Sal followed close behind, firing wild shots to cover their retreat. They reached the roof, a flat expanse of tar and gravel with air conditioning units rusting in the salt air from the East River. Vivian pointed to the neighboring building. "There, 6 feet across." Marcus looked at the gap. 4 stories of empty air yawned below, ending in a narrow alley filled with dumpsters and broken glass. Jump or die. The roof access door burst open behind them. 6 Galante soldiers spilled out, weapons raised. Vivian didn't hesitate. She launched herself into empty air, her body stretching across the gap. She hit the adjacent roof in a perfect roll, combat training taking over. Marcus followed, landing hard but safe, his expensive shoes skidding on loose gravel. They turned for Sal. The big bodyguard sprinted toward the edge, his face set with determination. He jumped, arms outstretched, reaching for the ledge. A single shot cracked through the morning air. The bullet caught Sal mid-flight, punching through his shoulder and destroying his momentum. His hands missed the ledge by inches. For a moment he hung in space, surprise written on his face. Then gravity claimed him. He fell, tumbling through empty air, and crashed into the dumpster 4 stories below with a sound that would haunt Marcus's nightmares. Marcus lunged forward, screaming, "Sal!" He stared into the alley, watching his most loyal soldier's broken body sprawled across garbage bags. 15 years of brotherhood, 15 years of trust, gone in a single bullet. Vivian grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. She slapped him hard enough to leave a mark. "And they'll kill you too if you don't move!" She dragged him from the edge as bullets began to chip the concrete around them. They sprinted across the Queen's rooftops, a desperate parkour race against death. Vivian led, her knowledge of these buildings from months of reconnaissance giving them the advantage. They jumped gaps, slid down fire escapes, vaulted over AC units. 5 blocks later, they collapsed in a narrow alley behind a Chinese restaurant. The smell of garbage and cooking oil filled their lungs. Marcus gasped for air, his body shaking. Not from fear, from rage that consumed him like fire. "They killed him. They killed Sal." Tears mixed with the dust and blood on his face. Vivian's voice stayed steady, anchoring him to reality. "They're going to pay. I'm going to burn the Galantes to the ground." "We will, but not today. Today we survive." She stood and extended her hand to the fallen king of New York. "Where do we go? I have no safe houses left." Vivian pulled him to his feet. "You have me, and I know a place where the Mafia doesn't go, a place where the Wraith used to train. We go there, we heal, then we take back your city." Marcus looked at her scarred, calloused hand. He took it. "Lead the way." Iron Eddie's gym existed in the liminal space beneath the elevated 4 train tracks in the Bronx. The building didn't appear on city maps, deliberately omitted through careful bribes and strategic neglect. When the steel door opened, a man carved from granite and old violence studied them with eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything. Declan the Bull O'Malley stood 6'1", his shoulders still broad despite 61 years of wear. Scars mapped his knuckles and forearms. His nose had been broken 7 times and set poorly each time. White hair cropped military short. He'd trained fighters for 4 decades, taught them how to take punishment and dish it back with interest. He looked from Vivian to Marcus, taking in the blood and dust and exhaustion. "Wraith, you brought a stray." "I brought a partner." Vivian's voice carried an edge that O'Malley recognized, the sound of someone who'd decided to stop running. O'Malley's eyes assessed Marcus with the cold calculation of a man who could read weakness in a glance. "He looks soft. We fix that." The gym smelled of sweat, leather, and the liniment that O'Malley rubbed into damaged muscles. A regulation ring dominated the center, its canvas stained with the evidence of 10,000 rounds. Heavy bags hung from chains, their surfaces worn smooth by countless fists. Speed bags, jump ropes, weights that had built champions and broken pretenders. A small room in the back held a cot, a mini-fridge, and a bathroom with a shower that had seen better decades. It wasn't much. but it was invisible, and invisibility meant survival. The first week broke Marcus down systematically. O'Malley showed no mercy, no deference to the man's wealth or reputation. In this gym, those things meant nothing. Only the work mattered. "You fight like a spoiled brat." O'Malley circled Marcus on the canvas. "All ego, no discipline." Marcus bristled, his pride wounded. "I was Golden Gloves runner-up." "That was 16 years ago. You're soft now. Vivian, show him." She stepped into the ring, moving with the fluid economy of someone who'd logged 10,000 hours. Marcus threw a heavy jab, telegraphed, obvious. She batted it away effortlessly. He tried a hook. She slipped inside and countered with a light body shot that made him gasp. "You fight with anger. Anger makes you predictable. Predictable makes you dead." She stepped back, her face unreadable. "Don't try to break the wave, Marcus. Be the water." Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself. Instead, he listened. Something in her voice, in the absolute certainty of someone who'd survived what should have killed them, made him pay attention. The days blurred into a routine of pain and incremental progress. Footwork drills until his calves burned, ladder work to teach his feet the angles, cone drills to build explosive movement, mirror drills with Vivian as his partner, forcing him to match her rhythm. Defense came harder. O'Malley hung a slip bag, a heavy ball suspended at head height, and made Marcus dodge left and right while Vivian called combinations. Slip, slip, roll, duck. Her voice became his metronome, the rhythm that kept him alive. Shell defense made him feel vulnerable, keeping his elbows tight to his body while Vivian threw body shots that he had to absorb without flinching. But gradually, his body remembered. Muscle memory from his Golden Gloves days began to resurface, refined now by desperation and focus. Offensive precision replaced his brawling instincts. He drilled arm bars, rear naked chokes, leg locks, until Marcus could feel weight distribution, could anticipate hip escapes and reversals. Mental training came last, but mattered most. Vivian sat with him after the physical work ended, teaching him to control the panic that could kill faster than any bullet. Your biggest enemy isn't the Galantes, it's your own fear. She demonstrated box breathing. 4 counts in, hold 4, out 4, hold 4. Control your breath, you control your body. Control your body, you control the fight. Week 3 brought transformation. Marcus lasted a full 5-minute round without getting knocked down. Vivian smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face from cold beauty to something warm and human. "Better. You're learning." That night, they sat on the ring apron, sharing water from a single bottle. The intimacy of exhaustion had broken down walls that violence couldn't touch. "Why did you really leave Atlantic City?" Marcus asked. "It wasn't just the bounty." Vivian's eyes went distant, seeing ghosts. "The fight that ended everything? My opponent was a kid, 20 years old, from Newark. The syndicate ordered me to break his arm in round 1 to send a message to a rival operation. I refused. They said they'd kill me if I didn't comply. So I went into that ring planning to throw the fight, let him beat me, then disappear into the wind. But the kid was good, too good. He had my patterns figured out by round 2. He was going to win legitimately. Then I saw the syndicate boss give a signal to his corner. They poisoned his water bottle. He started seizing in round 3, fell and hit his head on the ring post, brain hemorrhage, dead before the ambulance arrived. I realized they were going to kill him regardless. My refusal meant nothing. I was just a tool, a weapon they pointed at targets. So I walked out, went to the boss's office that night. He laughed, said I couldn't leave. That's when I saw the photos. Dozens of girls like me. Teenagers sold into the fight circuit, their futures stolen. I burned the building, got the girls out first. The boss didn't make it. Marcus absorbed this, his hand reaching for hers. He didn't say anything, just held her scarred knuckles in his palm. Vivian's voice broke, the first time Marcus had heard her armor crack. "I'm tired, Marcus. Tired of running. Tired of being a weapon. I want to be a person again." He squeezed her hand. Then we finish this, together, and when it's over, you get to choose who you are. The moment stretched, intimate and fragile. Then O'Malley walked in, having overheard the last part. His gruff voice carried unexpected gentleness. Word on the street, Galante's put out a $500,000 bounty on you two. And someone from Philadelphia just flew into LaGuardia. Tall guy, expensive suit, asking about the Wraith. Vivian went pale. Dominic. Who's Dominic? Dominic Santoro, Luciano family enforcer out of Philadelphia. He's the one who handled the $5 million bounty after I burned down the syndicate. If he's here, it means they know where I am. Marcus stood, his body hardening with resolve. Then we don't have 6 weeks. We have maybe 1. Week 5 arrived with December cold and strategic intelligence that would reshape their war. They'd been at Iron Eddie's gym for 33 days, long enough for muscle memory to rebuild, short enough that the Galantes believed them dead and buried. O'Malley returned from a supply run with surveillance photos spread across his battered desk, images captured by a contact who still worked security at the Obsidian. The Galantes are hosting a coronation gala this Saturday. Donato Galante himself, taking over your club publicly. 50 guards, metal detectors, invitation only. O'Malley tapped a photo showing Galante's wrist. He's wearing your watch, Marcus. The Patek Philippe had belonged to Marcus's father, a gift marking his 20th year running family operations. Seeing it wrapped around Galante's wrist felt like desecration, like watching someone dance on a grave. My club. Vivian studied blueprints O'Malley had acquired through channels he refused to explain. Her tactical mind dissected every entrance, every vulnerability. It's a fortress. We can't fight 50 men head-on. We don't need to fight them. O'Malley's scarred finger traced the main entrance. Galantes are old-school superstitious. They believe in ghosts, curses, omens written in blood. If Marcus walks through the front door, a dead man resurrected, they'll freeze. Superstition buys you 3 seconds. Vivian's green eyes sharpened with understanding, the predator recognizing an opening. In 3 seconds, I can remove the head from the snake. They spent the next 5 days constructing a plan from equal parts desperation and precision. Marcus would enter through the main doors, visible and impossible to ignore. Vivian would slip through the kitchen. She knew that route intimately from her waitressing days, knew which cameras had blind spots and which staff entrance had a broken lock that maintenance never fixed. O'Malley would cut power at the external breaker box exactly 2 minutes after Marcus entered. Emergency lights would activate, bathing everything in disorienting red wash. In that confusion, Vivian would reach the VIP booth. Marcus would confront Galante with psychological warfare, while Vivian neutralized guards using non-lethal methods when possible. They'd force a confession, recorded via a microphone sewn into Marcus's jacket lining. Then they'd transmit the evidence to an FBI contact Vivian had cultivated during her months investigating escape routes from the city. The final piece involved data Vivian had already stolen. She'd hacked Galante's financial servers weeks ago, planting his ledgers on an FBI server with a delayed upload trigger. The moment they activated it, federal agents would descend like locusts. This is insane. Marcus studied the plan, searching for fatal flaws his paranoia insisted existed. If one element fails, then we improvise. That's what we do. Vivian's certainty carved through his doubt like a blade through silk. The night before the mission, they sat in the ring under fluorescent lights that hummed with failing ballasts. Marcus wrapped his hands in the methodical way O'Malley had drilled into him, each loop of tape a small meditation. Vivian cleaned a pistol that wouldn't be coming with them, just habit, the ritual of preparation her father had beaten into her bones. Marcus's hands stilled on the tape. If tomorrow doesn't work out the way we planned, it will. But if it doesn't, I need you to know something. He turned to face her fully, vulnerability crossing features that had learned to hide everything. You changed me. I was a king sitting on a throne built from fear and broken bones, thinking I had everything, but I was hollow inside, just an echo of what my father wanted me to be. You showed me what real strength looks like. It's not ruling through terror. It's fighting for something that actually matters. His voice dropped lower. You matter, Vivian. She set the gun aside with deliberate care. When this is over, what do you want? I want to rebuild the family operations into something legitimate. Use the network for security contracts, cyber protection, work that doesn't leave bodies in alleys or mothers crying over closed caskets. No more blood money. He paused, searching for courage. And I want you beside me, not as a bodyguard, not as a weapon, as a partner, equal in everything. Vivian stood and walked to him. She cupped his face in her hands, calluses rough against his skin, the texture of survival. You're the first man who ever asked what I wanted, instead of telling me what I was. They kissed. Not the desperate collision of people seeking escape from their demons, but the slow, deliberate connection of two warriors finding peace in each other. Marcus pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers. After tomorrow, we see if we survive. Then we talk about futures. Their final sparring session the next morning revealed how far Marcus had traveled. He moved differently now, fluid and economical, no wasted motion betraying amateur eagerness. Vivian threw full-speed combinations that would have hospitalized him 5 weeks ago. He slipped two, parried one, countered with a controlled shovel hook that would have dropped most men. O'Malley rang the bell. Stop. That's it. You're ready. Marcus and Vivian touched gloves, the boxer's gesture of respect earned through shared suffering and sweat and blood. O'Malley's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message, age lines deepening around his eyes. Santoro just checked into the plaza, 2 blocks from the Obsidian. He's been asking staff about Saturday's gala. He'll be there. Vivian's voice carried no fear, just cold acceptance of variables beyond control. Then we deal with 3 threats simultaneously: Galantes, FBI, and the Lucianos. Marcus looked at her, seeing the exiled queen who'd become his anchor. We've faced worse odds. Have we? But she smiled, fierce and certain as a blade. Tomorrow, we take back everything they stole. December 28th, 2024, Saturday night. The Obsidian had been transformed under Galante occupation. The velvet Marcus had chosen was gone, replaced with black leather and gold accents that screamed nouveau riche desperation. Champagne flowed from fountains like water. Bass from imported speakers made crystal chandeliers tremble in their moorings. Donato Galante held court in Marcus's former booth, 56 years old with silver hair and the vulture-sharp features of a man who'd climbed over corpses to reach power. He wore the stolen Patek Philippe on his wrist, its weight a constant reminder of conquest. His suits cost $20,000, but somehow always looked cheap on his frame. At 9:47 p.m., Vivian entered through the kitchen. She wore a black server uniform stolen from the laundry service, her hair in a simple bun. No glasses this time, she was done hiding from the world. The kitchen staff barely glanced at her. Invisibility came from confidence, from moving like you belonged in whatever space you occupied. She picked up a tray of canapés and merged into the flow of servers working the main floor. Her eyes cataloged everything with tactical precision. Guard positions, exit routes, the heavy security presence that made the air thick with testosterone and poor judgment. At 9:55 p.m., the front doors opened. Marcus Dante Moretti walked into the Obsidian. He wore a vintage tuxedo that O'Malley had somehow procured, fitted perfectly to his transformed frame. His hair was swept back, face clean-shaven. He looked untouched by the chaos of the past 6 weeks. He looked immortal. The club fell silent. Conversations died mid-word. A champagne flute slipped from someone's hand and shattered, the sound like a gunshot in the sudden quiet that pressed down like physical weight. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Is that? No, he's dead. The Galantes killed him. That's a ghost. Donato Galante stood slowly, his face draining of color until it matched the white tablecloth. The champagne flute in his hand trembled, spilling expensive French wine onto Italian leather. You're dead. Marcus's voice carried across the silent room, resonant with command presence that 6 weeks of training had refined into a weapon. I was, but hell wouldn't have me. Something about unfinished business. He walked toward the VIP section with measured steps. The crowd parted like water before a shark's approach. 50 guards stood frozen, their training short-circuited by superstition that ran deeper than logic or money. O'Malley had been right. They believed in ghosts, and a ghost had just walked through their door. At 9:57 p.m., the lights died. Absolute darkness crashed down. Screams erupted. Panic spread like wildfire through people who'd never faced real danger, who thought money could buy immunity from death. 10 seconds later, emergency lights activated. Eerie red illumination painted everything in shades of blood and shadow that made the familiar alien. Vivian had used the darkness to close distance. She now stood behind Galante's personal security detail, 4 men who'd killed for him, who'd sworn loyalty unto death or prison. She didn't attack. She spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. "Gentlemen, my name is Vivian Castellano. You may know me as the Wraith. I killed 3 of your colleagues 2 weeks ago in 14 seconds. I'm offering you a choice. Walk away now, or I add 4 more names to my count. Choose quickly." One guard, young and smart enough to value his life over his paycheck, lowered his weapon. He stepped back, hands raised in surrender that his grandfather would have called cowardice, but his mother would call wisdom. The second guard, older and stupider, sneered, "We don't take orders from bitches." Vivian sighed. Wrong answer. The fight lasted 38 seconds. The older guard swung a haymaker that Marcus, trained Marcus, slipped with minimal movement. As the guard's momentum carried him forward, Marcus drove a shovel hook into his liver. The man collapsed instantly, gasping like a landed fish. The third guard charged with a knife drawn from a boot sheath. Vivian kicked the heavy oak champagne table onto its side, creating instant cover. The blade slashed empty air where her throat had been. Marcus parried the guard's wrist, trapped his arm, and drove an elbow into his nose. Cartilage shattered with a wet crack that made nearby witnesses gag. The fourth guard aimed his pistol at Vivian. She threw a full champagne bottle, 8 pounds of glass and liquid moving at 30 miles per hour. It struck his gun hand, knocking the weapon away. She closed the distance and drove her high heel into his kneecap. The joint exploded sideways. He went down screaming. The fifth guard pulled a backup pistol, aiming at Marcus's back. Vivian saw it, no time for warnings or clever tactics. She launched herself in an 8-foot leap that would have impressed Olympic athletes. She collided with the guard as he fired. The bullet went wide, shattering an antique mirror behind the bar into 1,000 reflections of violence. They hit the ground together. He tried to aim again. She grabbed his gun hand and bent his wrist backward until bones snapped like dry branches. He dropped the weapon, sobbing. The crowd stood paralyzed. Some fled for exits. Some filmed on phones, capturing evidence that would go viral within hours. The age of secrets was dying in real-time documentation. Marcus reached Galante, who fumbled for a gold-plated revolver in his jacket. Marcus caught his wrist and twisted until bone fractured with sound like snapping wood. Galante screamed, a high sound stripped of all dignity and power. Marcus slammed Galante's face into the table. Spilled champagne and broken glass cut the older man's cheeks. "You broke the peace. You killed Sal DiNardo, the best man I've ever known. You tried to hunt us like we were animals you could cage." Galante's voice came out choked with pain and fear. "Please, I'll give you everything. Money, territory, my suppliers. Just let me go." Marcus looked at Vivian. She nodded once, the prearranged signal they'd practiced. Marcus straightened his tie with his free hand. "You don't get to leave, Donato. I'm not going to kill you. That would be mercy you don't deserve." Vivian pulled out her phone, showing Galante the screen with its damning evidence. 5 minutes ago, I uploaded your private ledgers to the FBI's organized crime database. Every bribe, every murder, every shipment documented in your own hand. The federal agents are already en route. Galante's eyes widened with horror that transcended physical pain. No. No! Marcus's voice dropped to something cold and final. You'll spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison. Solitary confinement. 23 hours a day in a concrete box. You'll watch the sun through bars and know you lost to a dead man. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. From the crowd, a tall man stepped forward. 6'5", custom suit that cost more than most cars. A scar running through his left eyebrow. Dominic the Blade Santoro, 45 years old and the most feared enforcer in the Luciano crime family. Vivian Castellano, or should I call you by your ring name? Vivian's body went rigid. This was the nightmare scenario, the variable they couldn't plan for or control. The Lucianos send their regards. $5 million is a substantial bounty. I've been searching for you for 2 years. He pulled a Beretta from a shoulder holster, the motion smooth and practiced as breathing. Marcus stepped in front of Vivian, placing his body between her and the gun. You want her? Come through me first. Santoro's laugh held genuine amusement. Brave. Foolish, but brave. The standoff stretched, tension pulling the air tight enough to snap. Vivian's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds and outcomes. Santoro was former military, expert in close-quarters combat. She could take him, but not before he got a shot off. If she died, Marcus died trying to protect her. If Marcus died, she'd kill Santoro but lose the only person who'd ever seen her as human instead of a weapon. Unacceptable. She spoke in Italian, the language of her father and his father before him. Santoro, you're a professional. The Lucianos pay you for results, not vendettas. I have a counteroffer worth considering. Santoro's gun didn't waver, but his eyes showed interest. I'm listening. The ledgers I sent to the FBI? They include detailed information about Luciano operations in New York, shipment routes, warehouse locations, every contact from here to Philadelphia. If you kill me, that information becomes public tomorrow morning. The Lucianos lose their East Coast infrastructure overnight. You're bluffing. But uncertainty crept into his voice like water through stone. Am I? Check your phone. Your boss received a sample 10 minutes ago. Santoro's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with his free hand, glancing at the screen without lowering his weapon. His expression shifted from anger to calculation. He was a businessman who killed for profit, not a zealot who killed for ideology. He lowered the Beretta slowly. You're proposing a trade. The full data for your life. Not just my life. I'm offering you Galante's entire network. Chicago, Miami, Las Vegas. Contacts, territories, operations that took him 30 years to build. The Lucianos absorb everything with zero resistance. You become a hero to your bosses instead of the man who started a war you couldn't win. Marcus added his voice, quiet but weighted with certainty. And if you refuse, you shoot her. I kill you. The FBI arrests everyone they can find. The Lucianos get nothing except a power vacuum their enemies will fill. Santoro holstered his weapon. You have 48 hours to deliver the contacts. If you don't, the bounty returns. And next time, I won't announce myself. He turned toward the exit, pausing at the door. You're intelligent, Wraith. That's why you're still breathing. He disappeared into the crowd as FBI agents burst through the main entrance. Tactical teams in body armor, weapons drawn, shouting commands that echoed off expensive surfaces bought with blood money. Marcus and Vivian used the chaos, slipping through the kitchen exit into the alley where O'Malley waited in a van with the engine already running. Get in! They dove into the back. The van peeled away from the curb, tires screaming against wet asphalt. Inside, Marcus and Vivian sat on the floor, adrenaline finally crashing and leaving them shaking. O'Malley's voice came from the driver's seat. News is everywhere. Feds arrested Galante. 17 of his top lieutenants in handcuffs. It's finished. Marcus looked at Vivian, exhaustion and relief warring in his expression. Is it? Santoro. I'll handle Santoro. Galante's contacts are in the seized files. The FBI will hand them over as evidence eventually. I'll anonymize the data and send it to the Lucianos. They'll leave us alone. She managed a small smile. I planned for this contingency. Santoro's predictable. He's a businessman who happens to kill people, not a killer who happens to do business. Marcus took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Where to? Connecticut, the safe house off Route 7. We lay low for a month until federal attention shifts. Vivian squeezed his hand. Then, we build something new. March 28, 2025, 3 months later. The Obsidian had been reborn again. Marcus purchased it from bankruptcy auction for $6 million, half its actual worth, but money talked when federal seizure clouded titles. He'd gutted the Galante aesthetic, replacing tacky gold with sophisticated charcoal fabric and clean modern lines. No velvet, no ostentation. Power didn't need to scream anymore. Marcus's office occupied the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, where early spring was painting the trees green. Minimalist furniture, a desk that cost more for its restraint than its materials. This was the workspace of someone who'd learned that true strength came from discipline, not display. The door opened. Vivian walked in, and Marcus felt the same catch in his chest he'd experienced every day for 3 months. She wore a tailored charcoal pantsuit that matched his own, her hair down in waves that caught afternoon light. No glasses, no hunched shoulders, no apologies for existing. Professional, powerful, equal in every way that mattered. She handed him a tablet. The Lucianos accepted our revised terms. Security consulting contracts only. Cyber protection, risk assessment, executive protection for their legitimate businesses. No weapons, no trafficking. Nothing that puts us back in federal crosshairs. Marcus scrolled through the agreement, impressed despite himself. You negotiated directly with them? Santoro's boss appreciated the Galante contacts. They've made $40 million in the first quarter absorbing those territories. He sees more value in keeping us alive and allied than dead and scattered. She sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something simple and clean that reminded him of new beginnings. We're useful now. Useful is better than dangerous. Marcus set the tablet down and pulled her close, his hands on her waist. You know, I still owe you $15,200 for the suit you ruined. Vivian laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded in ways she'd never been before meeting him. I think we're even, Marcus. I saved your life, you saved mine. No. His voice went soft, intimate in the way he only allowed with her. I didn't save you. I just gave you a bigger arena to fight in. You saved yourself the moment you decided to stop running. He kissed her, and the city sprawled beneath them, their city now, rebuilt not on fear but on respect earned through blood and transformation and choosing to be better than what their fathers had made them. The past 3 months had been careful construction. Moretti's Security Consulting had launched as a legitimate firm, providing cybersecurity, private protection, and risk assessment. Their client list read like a Fortune 500 directory. Law firms needing discreet protection, tech companies wanting executive security, celebrities tired of amateur bodyguards who created more problems than they solved. The Obsidian became a networking hub for business elites. No crime, just connections brokered over expensive scotch. The kind of place where deals happened in handshakes that meant more than contracts. Vivian served as chief security officer, her face now public and her past acknowledged in careful terms. She'd been a fighter, yes, had a complicated history, certainly, but she'd walked away from that life and built something better. The narrative was true enough to satisfy curiosity without inviting investigation. Marcus operated as CEO, leveraging his former connections, now transformed into allies rather than enemies, to broker deals and resolve disputes without violence. The network he'd inherited from his father became a resource for legitimate business instead of a machine for generating corpses and grief. O'Malley ran a Moretti-funded youth boxing gym in the Bronx, giving kids an alternative to the streets that had swallowed so many of their older brothers and fathers. The old fighter had found purpose, teaching the next generation that discipline mattered more than rage. Sal's family received a $2 million trust fund. His widow and 3 children would never want for anything. An annual scholarship in Sal's name sent underprivileged kids from the Bronx to college. The money couldn't bring him back, but it honored what he'd stood for: loyalty, protection, family chosen rather than born into. Not everything was clean. They still maintained contacts with gray market operators, information brokers who traded in secrets instead of drugs. They had relationships with former enemies, alliances built on mutual benefit rather than affection. Vivian's past remained one mistake away from resurfacing like a corpse in dark water. But they navigated it together. That made all the difference. Evening fell over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Marcus of Bruce's healing. They stood on their penthouse balcony, their shared home now, not his territory or hers, but space they'd claimed together through choice rather than necessity. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "Leaving the ghost behind?" Vivian leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time since her father had started training her at 8 years old. The Wraith was survival. This is living. There's a difference between existing and being alive. What if someone from your past comes back? Another syndicate looking to collect? Her voice carried absolute certainty forged in fire and blood. "Then we handle it. Together. I'm not running anymore, Marcus. I found something worth standing and fighting for." He turned her to face him. "What if I get arrogant again, start treating you like you're beneath me?" She grabbed his tie, pulling him close with a smirk that promised violence and affection in equal measure. "Then I'll remind you what happened last time. A shovel hook to the liver is very humbling." They laughed, the sound carrying over the city that had tried to break them and failed. Marcus's expression turned serious, vulnerable in the way he only allowed with her. "I love you, Vivian Castellano. Not the Wraith, not the waitress you pretended to be. Just you. The woman who taught me that real power comes from choosing who you want to be, instead of accepting what others made you." Vivian's eyes glistened, tears she'd refused to shed for 20 years finally breaking through armor she'd thought was permanent. "I love you too. You're the first person who made me feel like I had a choice in who I could become." They kissed as the city lights blazed beneath them, a kingdom rebuilt on respect instead of fear. Vivian's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She pulled it from her pocket, glancing at the screen. Her expression shifted. "Congratulations on your new life, Wraith, but you owe me a rematch. See you soon. NS." She showed Marcus. He read it, then met her eyes with the calm of someone who'd learned that threats were just problems waiting to be solved. "Together?" "Together." They turned from the balcony and walked inside, closing the doors on the night. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tonight, they had peace. And peace, they'd learned, was something you had to fight for every single day.